Hi folks, in this video I'm going to be talking to you about Jóga by Björk, which is my favorite tune by one of my favorite musicians in the world. Here's the album cover. I don't really have a lot to say about it except that it is terrifying. Kind of like Björk herself, God love her. So this tune is a pretty strange one, harmonically, formally, sonically, melodically. There's a lot going on in it. But most of it is in and around the key of E. And so the main thing that's going to be happening chord-wise is almost everything is going to be from inside the key of E major, but Björk is going to emphasize different chords within this key as kind of these temporary modal home bases. And this starts right at the beginning of the tune, where the first tune that we hear is G sharp minor, the 3 chord in E. And it's rare to use the 3 chord at all, much less to emphasize it so heavily. And because she does, it feels actually like this first section is in G sharp Phrygian mode. So what you're going to hear are 3 chords from G sharp Phrygian and then a surprise right at the beginning of the tune. So here we go. So the surprise was that 4th chord. The first 3 are G sharp minor, A major, B major, and then if you were to keep going up the E major scale, you would get C sharp minor. And that is not, in fact, what Björk has. For her last chord, she doesn't have C sharp minor, she has C sharp major, which feels to me, it feels like a C sharp dominant 7th chord, actually. So it kind of feels like C sharp Mixolydian. And I say that because the B chord going into it, if you just listen to those 2 chords in isolation, feels like the 7 chord and the 1 chord in C sharp Mixolydian. And so this is like a pretty common way to make diatonic harmony less boring, is to take a chord that's native to one of the major scales and change its quality from major to minor or vice versa to suggest new keys. So that's what Björk has done. So those same 4 chords repeat. And then first one, we're still keeping this G sharp Phrygian feel, just going up and down 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 4, 5 within E major, or 1, flat 2, flat 3, flat 2, 1 in G sharp Phrygian, however you want to think about it. It amounts to the same thing.
All these accidents that happen, follow the dot. Coincidence makes sense only with you. You don't have to speak, I feel.
And then the last time through, she just hangs for an extra 2 beats on that B chord instead of going back down to A. All right, so then in the pre-chorus, there's a shift. We're still within E major, but now the 6th chord. Sorry, let me switch back to E major. All right, so we're still in E major, but the 6th chord is going to become So we're still in E major, but now the 6th chord is going to feel like home base for a little while. So much so that it's going to feel like we're shifting into C sharp natural minor. So what I'm going to do is change our root to C sharp and change our scale to natural minor. Now this is still the E major scale. Everything in here is still, but we're going to think of this chord as being home base.
Landscapes, they pass on me.
So we're going emotional landscape. They puzzle me. Get solved. She sits on that A chord for a long time.
The riddle gets solved, and you push me up to this.
Now, I don't know about you, I kind of lose my sense of being in C-sharp minor from sitting in this chord for so long, and as soon as you hear the next chord, it's going to retroactively make this A chord not feel like C-sharp minor anymore. We're going to land back on E for the first unambiguous E major in the whole tune. And that A chord, that long A chord, is just going to retroactively feel like the 4 chord in E major. So here we go.
The riddle gets solved, and you push me up to this state of emergency. How beautiful to be stayed.
Okay, so 2 interesting things just happened there. We start on state of emergency. That's not very interesting or unusual, but then she goes to the 3 chord. How beautiful. I think it's beautiful, yeah. To be. And then she lands on the 6th chord on C-sharp minor. And she only sits on that 6th chord for 1 beat. So that makes for a phrase with a pretty odd length to it. And then it kind of awkwardly just resets after that 1 beat back to E.
Beautiful to be state of emergency.
Don't try this at home, amateur songwriters. Don't mess around with odd phrase lengths unless you really know what you're doing. Björk can do it in a way that sounds natural. You should stick to making everything be like an even number of bars and beats long until you attain this level of mastery. All right, so second time she goes around, it just leads us back into this G-sharp Phrygian feeling for this short break.
State of emergency is where I want to be.
Okay, so that break is identical to the intro. We get second verse identical to the first verse, harmonically and formally. Get this next pre-chorus. So the second pre-chorus is longer than the first one. You can see this first one just has these 2 phrases, and then this one. So this one has 3 phrases. Okay, now, if you've never heard the tune before, you might be expecting we're going to land back on E major for the second chorus, but now there's a new bass line in there. And the bass line is just pedaling on C-sharp minor all the way through. So regardless of what's happening in the chords in the chorus, this bass line is just going to be like hammering home that we're actually in C-sharp minor. I do not know the details of how this song was written or produced. Here's what I'm assuming happened. I'm assuming that Björk, had the melody and the chords worked out, and she brought it to Mark Bell, who produced the song with her, and was just like, all right, Mark, just put a bass line under here, just give me whatever you feel. And Mark Bell, for whatever reason, heard it in C-sharp minor rather than in E major, and Björk, rather than correcting him, found this to be a delightful surprise. I don't know that that's what happened, but that is what I would guess. So we got these chords in the key of E major and this bass line in C-sharp minor. Cool, right? Like, they don't exactly agree with each other, but close enough that it kind of makes sense. All right, so this chorus goes through 3 of these phrases, and then a very strange thing happens. How So this part. Now, there's not really any harmony in here, but I did label it F sharp Dorian, and this is why. The kick drum, to me, is playing a pretty unambiguous F sharp, and there's still this E hanging over from the end of the chorus. So it just, the whole thing kind of implies an F sharp minor 7 chord. And I mean, you could think of that as being 2 in E major or as being 4 in C sharp minor, but it hangs for such a long time that it just feels like its own kind of center of gravity. Maybe I'm like searching too hard for harmony, and the pitch of this kick drum is like a little bit arbitrary and random, and I don't think Mark Bell was really intending anything so specific by it harmonically, but that is the effect that it ends up having. By the way, how awesome is this drum sound? I'm pretty sure what's happening is he took some, mammoth sounding drum and distorted the ever-living hell out of it, and then put like a very aggressive low-pass filter sweep on it, plus some reverb. I don't know specifically what drums or effects he's using, but ooh, they sound good. Got that nice distorted reverb or whatever it is up there. Okay, so get another pre-chorus, it's the same as the others. Get another chorus, which is similar to the previous one, just repeats more times. The last time through, yet another interesting, surprising thing happens. Let's listen to it. So all the harmonic backing kind of falls away except for this really high-pitched accordion, I think it's an accordion, playing what sounds to me like the notes like E and D sharp. So there's still this feeling of E major, but it's like a kind of an E major 7th chord. But yeah, it's a weird, ambiguous feeling. Now here again, the chords are not very specific. It feels like we're kind of in this A-Lydian kind of place. But I mean, it's pretty ambiguous. Like if I had to pick a chord that was underneath all that, it would be A major 7 sharp 11, just the 4 chord in E major. But I mean, it's totally ambiguous. By the way, when Björk is singing stuff like this in these kinds of sections of her songs, I would always assume that she was singing in Icelandic, and as it turns out, sometimes she is, but very often she's just singing like nonsense. And I assume that she writes her songs by just like scat singing nonsense and then finds English words to match them afterwards, and that she sometimes just leaves some of her nonsense scat singing in the finished product. And Peter Gabriel is another person who does that. Like he scat sings nonsense as his songwriting process, and then will deliberately leave some of the nonsense in there at the end. So yeah, anyway, if you're hearing something that sounds like Icelandic at the end of a Björk song, it might be, but it is more likely to actually just be like just random syllables, which God love her. chorus form just kind of reemerges from the fog. And then just continues through the fade out. Björk herself wrote that string part. Apparently the live strings weren't added until very late in the process, so I'm assuming that she just had like fake Sibelius strings underneath the track while she was working it out. Yeah, be interesting to hear some demo versions, and we shall put those out one day. So that's it. That's Jóga by Björk. Very strange tune, yet almost the whole thing just from boring old plain vanilla diatonic E major. There you go. Thanks for watching.